All right, back here for one more episode of College Basketball Review Studio. Matt Mlodzinski just here with Ariel Puterman for this episode as we continue to count down our CBB Rank teams 30 through 21 on this episode. Ariel, I'll just toss it to you. We'll jump right into it. But these 10 teams, I know we talked last episode about how we finally have teams that maybe could make a run in the NCAA tournament, good teams to look at. It seems like even now we might even have teams that you could say are a borderline Final Four contender.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. We went from teams who were tournament locks, but maybe they're making the Sweet 16 Elite Eight, to teams that can absolutely make the Final Four, and you can make a case for each one of these teams. These are really good teams. They're all going to finish probably top 5 in their conference. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Yeah, so without further ado, we got number 30, the Iowa Hawkeyes. Of course, no Fran McCaffrey this season, but in my opinion, I think the bigger news is no Owen Freeman and Josh Dix. Of course, both of them heading to play for nearby Creighton. Look, Fran McCaffrey, Ariel, I know you wrote this one. He hasn't had the best final few seasons in Iowa. Had a few really good seasons where they felt like they had a National Player of the Year every year for a few straight seasons. And then after that, it's been a few down years. They lose Fran McCaffrey. I think Iowa's ready to move on from him. But I think without Owen Freeman and Josh Dix, there could be some growing pains. But we seem to think that they might be able to settle it, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no better way to settle growing pains than by picking up the biggest winner in college basketball, in Ben McCollum. I mean, in the last 8 years, he won 4 Division II titles. He went 31-4 last year at Drake in his first year in Division I. I mean, this guy just knows how to win, and he has what it takes. And then you bring with him Bennett Sturts, who's probably a top 5 guard in the country. I think you can say that. He was just unbelievable last year in the half court, just creating shots, making his teammates better. So when you got those two guys, you're going to do pretty good on your own. They also bring 4 other guys from Drake from that 31-4 team. So I think building that system and that chemistry will really help. And then they bring in 2 decent guys in Alvaro Figueroas and Brandon House and Fulgaris. He won Conference Player of the Year in the Horizon last year. So I think he'll be a good piece. And then Housen's a great shooter as well. So it's going to be very different for Iowa because they're so used to these high-scoring games where defense was optional to going to a Ben McCollum-led team where they're going to have a really slow tempo. They finished last in tempo last year, and they're not going to have a lot of possessions. It's going to be a lot of Bennett starts creating shots with the shot clock running down. But if you're happy with winning, then this is the guy for you, and I think Iowa's definitely going to be happy with that.
Yeah, and just to be clear, too, we have Iowa just outside the top 25 in our CBB rank here, which, of course, we do before – well before. I don't know where you would have them today if we had to redo this, but probably around the same number. We have Iowa 9th in the Big Ten in this countdown. So we have a lot of Big Ten teams to get to in this episode and in the future final episodes as well. But, I mean, Iowa obviously right there in the mix, but there's a lot of other great teams in this conference. Let's move on, though, to number 29. That is on to the SEC, the Missouri Tigers. Of course, Dennis Gates. He's been there for a few seasons. It's been an up and down couple seasons for Dennis Gates. But you look at last year, 22-12, above 500 in the SEC. Ariel, you've been a big Dennis Gates fan. I'm going to be honest, I like this team that he has, but he's going to need stuff to work, right? Like Mark Mitchell is a great player. He's probably one of the best players in the conference, but he's going to need other guys to step up, right? And that's this whole Missouri team this year is guys that are back that are going to have the chance to step up. Do you think that it's enough around Mark Mitchell, or do you think someone's going to have to maybe become that star this season?
I think they'll definitely need a little more. And one guy I look at is Anthony Robinson. You might look at his stats, they don't really stand out, but you look at Evan Maya, one of those analytical models, who does a really good job of evaluating not just those typical box score stats. And he finished 23rd in the country last year in player ratings. It's above some really good players. This year he's ranked 20th in that category. So the analytics really love that. And I think that with these extended minutes, he'll get just being more in the lineup and some of those guys ahead of him leaving, like Tamar Bates. I think he's due for a breakout season. I think those two guys together will be really solid. I think they have a couple interesting pieces as well. Jacob Cruz from UT Martin came in last year, didn't really provide much, but 2 years ago he averaged about 19 a game. And then Jaden Stone from Detroit Mercy, 2 years ago, he averaged over 21 a game for that team. Missed all of last season with an injury, so he's another interesting piece. Now, that Detroit Mercy team did go 1-31, so might have been a little empty calorie, but he looked good in the exhibition game a few days ago. So a lot of interesting pieces on this team. I think Dennis Gates will do a good job with it. I think they'll probably end up where they were last year, which isn't bad by any means, and maybe that means a win or two in the tournament as well.
Yeah, I think the Anthony Robinson, Sebastian Mack backcourt is intriguing. I also like to look at Trent Pierce, a guy who had a weird season last year. Kind of started out as one of the maybe keyer scorers for this Missouri team. SEC play got along, and he just stopped scoring the basketball. In fact, he scored over 10 points in quite a few non-conference games against quite a few good teams, right? Had 13 in that road game in Memphis, had 24 in a game against LIU. So he showed that he could be a scorer. SEC play rolls around, Ariel. He had 10 points in one game against Arkansas. The rest of the time he didn't, but he became a better rebounder. I think he's going to have to score the ball more consistently in SEC play. He's going to have to be one of those guys that ups the ante. Again, I really like Mark Mitchell and what he brings to this team, but these guys are going to have to do it because Mark Mitchell's not a guy that you can just win around. He's a great piece on a great team that can win games, but other guys are going to have to step it up for Missouri. Let's move on to number 28. Back to the Big Ten. We have the Ohio State Buckeyes. Look, a team that has been one of the better teams in the Big Ten throughout the years, but had a little bit of a rough patch. It seems like the Buckeyes are starting to turn it around now. Your thoughts on Ohio State heading into this season?
I think this will really tell us if Jake Diebler is a good coach or not. I think last year a lot of people were a little bit lower on him in general and didn't think he should have gotten the job, even though he did a good job when Holtman got fired. But this year's a really true indicator for this team. And if they can't win with this roster, then I'm afraid he's not the right fit. I mean, they get Bruce Thorne back, who's a star. He'll be an All-American, at least a consideration for one. And then they also bring back Devin Royal and Junie Mobley, two guys who averaged 13 points per game for the team last year. What I really like about this team, though, is they bolstered up the front court, and that was a big issue for this team last year. They really relied on Aaron Bradshaw and Sean Stewart, and Aaron Bradshaw left the team for a month, and when he was out, they just had no depth, and they really struggled because of that. Even when he got back, he was fine, but it just the gap was definitely an issue. So bring in three guys who, one, played for winning teams, Tilly's from Santa Clara, Josh Ajamoah from Baylor, and then you bring in Brandon Noel from Wright State, who averaged 19 points per game. So bringing him depth there, I think, is really going to help. It's just about consistency, staying healthy, and obviously Diebler's coaching.
Yeah, I'll be honest too. I think Ohio State, when you bring back your starting backcourt, it's a great thing. When you bring back 1 through 3, I mean, very few teams, a handful of teams, power conference teams in college basketball can say that, and Ohio State has done that. So I think if you're looking at a team in the Big Ten in this big jumbled pack where we don't know who's going to be the cream of the crop in this conference, look at Ohio State, especially at the beginning of the season, to get some of those big non-conference wins. I mean, you look at the non-conference schedule, Ariel, it's really not that tough. I'll be honest, like other teams have tougher ones, but when you got a game against North Carolina there in December, this is the perfect roster to be able to get a game over UNC, right? This is the perfect roster to take control of that non-conference heading into Big Ten play. And who knows from there. But I'm with you. If Jake Diebler can't get this team, I'll be real, they should be winning at least 22, 23 games. They should be over 20 before Big Ten tournament play.
I'll go step further and say 25.
25?
I think so with this roster.
I think they can go far. Like, the more I'm looking at it, if their bench can come to play, I think Ohio State has real potential for a long run in March. Let's move on to number 27, NC State. This is a fun one, right? New head coach. Finally, the decision became easy what to do with Kevin Keatts, right? It was the most difficult decision in the world after they went to the Final Four, because even though you kind of knew that he wasn't the guy, you just can't fire someone after going to the Final Four. And then last year, Kevin Keatts just kind of made it very, very simple for NC State, right? Decided, okay, now we know we need to bring someone else in here. Of course, Will Wade comes after a couple great seasons at McNeese, brings some McNeese talent to this team, but also brings in his own talent. It's easy when you're Will Wade in the Southland Conference to get guys to play for you and to dominate a mid-major conference. It's going to be a lot tougher in the ACC. So my question to you, obviously, give me the rundown on this team this year. But do you think it's going to be a walk in the park for Wade? Do you think it's going to take him a year or two? Like what's the timeline here for Will Wade?
I think it'll be a walk in the park. I mean, he's coached. This is his 5th team that he's coaching, and his worst season ever was an 18-win season. That was with Chattanooga and his first season at LSU. Every other season, he's won 20-plus games, and this is at power conference teams as well, like LSU, and then VCU just right outside the power conference. So it's not like he's just going to McNeese and all these smaller schools and just dominating there. He knows what it takes to win, and he did a good job building a roster that can win in year one as well. You start with Darion Williams. He was the big addition from Texas Tech, and he's a winner. He comes from a winning team that made the Elite Eight. You bring in Terrence Arsenault from Houston. He's a winner. He comes from a team that made the finals last year. You bring in Trey Holloman from Michigan State, a team that made the Elite Eight and won the Big Ten by 3 games last year. And then you bring in one of his guys as well. I think it's Sincere Parker.
Mm-hmm.
Was it him?
No. He brings in Ellen Breed and Kadir Copeland.
Kadir Copeland, thank you. But another guy who one has been in the system and 2 has won a ton of games under Will Wade. So you bring in guys who have a winning culture already and want to continue that winning culture. It means more than people think. And this team's also experienced as well. All their starters except for Arsenault are going to be seniors. So I think that combination is just a formula for success. And I think Will Wade will be really good in year 1 and definitely be a top 5 team in the ACC.
Yeah, look, first off, they win that exhibition game over South Carolina. A game, when you look at this box score here, I mean, Van Allen Lubin, 18, Darian Williams, 16 and 7, Kadir Copeland, 16, Trey Holloman, 16, just as you'd expect. There's a couple things I want to point out here. Allen Breed, once he's ready to play full minutes, could be a star. He had huge outputs for McNeese in the 2 games that he played last season. I mean, that could be a guy that could totally take this roster from being top end in the ACC to top end in the country, right? If the potential is tapped when you bring in a guy like Allen Breed. Again, 2 games played. I'll just read off the stats for Allen Breed. He didn't do great at Providence, right? So we got to be honest. His chance in power conference ball, he did not do much. But when he was at McNeese last season, averaged 17.5 points, averaged a couple assists a game, 1.5 assists a game, 3 rebounds per game. But he was scoring the basketball for that McNeese team. So you have to have the feeling, if Allen Breed is healthy on this roster and what he's going to be able to do, right? Like Will Wade is going to trust him in this roster. I also want to give another shout out while we're on NC State here. We talk a lot about the non-conference slate and the mid-majors getting weeded out. Will Wade scheduled UAB, VCU, and Liberty. All home games. He's not going to go on the road and play them. But that takes a lot, right? Especially playing in the ACC where we already know the ACC is not on the level of the SEC or the Big Ten or maybe even the Big 12, right? You have fewer opportunities in the ACC compared to the other power conferences. But for Will Wade to schedule high mid-major programs that most power conference teams don't want to play and to schedule 3 of them, like that says a lot about how he's a basketball guy. He's not going to play this whatever you want to call it. Like this, he's not going to play the system here. He's going to schedule the teams, make sure his team is better.
Are we going to shout out Amir Khan, or are we past him and all of his antics from last year?
Good luck to him. Good luck to him in the Wolfpack. I'll say that. We got to find our new March Madness darling this year. Let's move on to number 26. That's Oregon, Ariel. I talked a lot there, so I'll just give it straight to you because you wrote about this Oregon team. Tell us about the Ducks.
Yeah, if you put out Nate Biddle, Jackson Shellstad, me, you, and Dan, I think we'd probably win 20 games. I mean, those 2 guys are so good together, and they stayed healthy last year, which is really important. Now, the one thing I am concerned about with this team is Shellstad did break his hand in early October. He should be fine, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on all season because you need your hands to play basketball. So definitely going to keep an eye out for that. Rest of their team is solid. I like Pryor. I think he'll be good. I like Evans as well, former 5-star. He could be an interesting piece. Hasn't really shown it. He's gotten the opportunity, so maybe something changes this year. One guy who was totally off my radar until their exhibition game was Wei Lin. He averaged 21.6 points per game in China, and he looked really good in the exhibition game. He's a small guard, but he shoots the ball really well. He passes the ball really well. If he could be another piece, I think that makes things interesting. But like I said, it really belongs to Biddle and Shellstad. If they're healthy, their ceiling's high. If Shellstad's banged up a little, I'm a little worried, and I'm afraid of their floor a little bit. But should be a solid team all around. Dana Albin's never lost less than 20, or never won less than 20 games in a season all the time in Oregon, which is pretty impressive. And I think that streak continues this year.
Yeah, it'll be a very fun Oregon team to watch. Jackson Shellstad's been one of my favorite players to watch in college basketball over the past few seasons. Look, I think he can lead Oregon to great heights. Oregon, we always seem to have up here in CBB rank, and it feels like they've dropped off, but I think this could be a year that they stay there and Oregon is there to stay at the start of the season and at the end. Let's move on to North Carolina, number 25. We're into the top 25 here of CBB rank, and what better team, right, than UNC? Hubert Davis, again, kind of like Jake Diebler, like he just has to figure it out, right? What's the consistency going to be like? It's kind of a cross between Dennis Gates. He's as inconsistent as Dennis Gates with Missouri, but we know that Dennis Gates is a good coach. I don't know if we know the same about Hubert Davis, so it's kind of like that Jake Diebler effect where it's like we need to know if he's a good coach. And I think we're going to get the answer this year because North Carolina obviously loses everyone. Seth Trimble is pretty much the main guy back, and then a couple of bench guys. I'm a little bit scared about that. I don't think Seth Trimble is a guy that can really take over games. I think he's a guy that can maybe be the second or best third scorer on a team. Second or third best scorer on the team, but I don't know if he can be the first best. And I think that's what we're going to have to figure out. But look, if you watched their exhibition game over the weekend, Caleb Wilson clearly could be that first guy. So I'm going to be honest. Like, I do think it's going to be Caleb Wilson. And Ariel, that's where I'm going to struggle with this team. Like, are they going to be fine having a freshman potentially as their leading scorer? And what could that look like for UNC? Or am I off base here? Do you think I'm wrong in this take?
No, I think that's totally valid. I mean, I think the big three freshmen, DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, and Cam Boozer are getting all the love, as they should, because they're phenomenal. But Caleb Wilson's a really good freshman as well. Number 5 overall, right behind Nate Ament from Tennessee. He's going to be great. I think he's built for this system. He's 6'10", so he's great size, great athleticism as well. I think he's going to be a really important piece, and how good he is determines how good the team is. Now, Hubert Davis, we all know, championship first year, misses championship appearance, misses the tournament second year, 1 seed third year, should have missed the tournament last year. That's a whole debate for another day. So history says this is going to be a good year for them, right? We'll see. But I actually like Trimble. I think that him and Cadeau just didn't mesh well. I'm not a huge Cadeau fan. We'll talk about him when we get to Michigan. But I think without him there and Kyan Evans, who's a good shooter and a guy who they could play off, I think he'll have a much better season. And I like Vasar as well from Arizona. I think he's a good big. He'll hold down the post, especially since Caleb Wilson can stretch the floor, and I think that'll be a good pair. So I think 25 is a fine place. I would probably rank them closer to 30, to be honest, but you said it. Big season for a lot of these guys, and if UNC wants their blue blood status back, they're going to have a big year this year.
And here's the thing that scares me about UNC. Obviously, they need Luka Bogovic if they have any chance of being successful this season because he's one of the best international prospects in college basketball this season. Did not play in the exhibition against BYU, but you know who did play, Ariel? Only 7 guys for at least 10 minutes. That scares me right now. I don't care. It's an exhibition. You're supposed to go through lineups, but when you have an exhibition and Jaden Young, a transfer you got from Virginia Tech, plays 8 minutes, and then Zayden High and James Brown, 2 guys that played very sparingly last season as freshmen, but did play a little bit. And you would hope that maybe at least one of them could be a depth piece that could be a little bit more important this year as sophomores. Both only got in garbage time minutes. 4 minutes for Zayden High, 3 minutes for James Brown. That's scary because that tells me that even if and when Bogovic plays, this is an 8-man rotation.
Yeah, these exhibition games are hard to grade because you want to take away a lot, but at the same time, they're exhibition games for a reason. So we'll see once the season tips around shortly. But I agree, there's a lot to be concerned about. But the ceiling, I think, is there with Caleb Wilson.
It is. Caleb Wilson's going to be fun to watch. Let's go on to Creighton, a team that's always fun to watch. They're number 24 in our CBB rank. I'll get right back at this one. Look, a Creighton team that, of course, you lose Ryan Kalkbrenner, but you bring in Alan Huss. So you got maybe the best coaching staff in college basketball with Greg McDermott and Alan Huss. Obviously, Huss will take over once McDermott decides to call it quits in a few seasons. But McDermott, look, he replaces Kalkbrenner with Owen Freeman, who we talked about earlier from Iowa. Josh Dix comes into the backcourt. He'll help out with Nick Graves over from Charlotte. So it's a talented backcourt. You got a talented center, not nearly in the same bracket as Ryan Kalkbrenner, who's one of the best offensive and defensive centers. Owen Freeman's a very differently gifted offensive center. He's not maybe as mobile as Kalkbrenner, but he has some post moves and he's physical. Jackson McAndrew is the key to me here because he averaged 8 points a game as a freshman. It just seems like it's going to be wide open for Jackson McAndrew to have a lot more shots. He's a 6'10 guy. He shoots a lot of threes. You know, if he even worked on his post game a little bit more, like he could have an all-around game and be an NBA prospect this season just because that type of body is just someone that in the NBA that's just perfect. But for Creighton this season, Ariel, I just think Jackson McAndrew is the key here, right? Like if he can have a big season, I think Creighton is in that top tier of the Big East. If he doesn't, and Owen Freeman is maybe playing slow and the backcourt isn't as good, I think it's UConn and St. John's and everyone else.
I disagree a little. I think he could be as good as he was last year, and they'll still be fine because they're going to score 1,000,000 points a game. I mean, Nick Graves averaged 17.5 last year. Blake Harper averaged 19.5. Owen Freeman averaged just under 17. Josh Dick shot the ball 42%. And then McAndrew is also a guy who could shoot. So they're going to score a bunch. And I think their motto is if we score more than the other team, then we're going to win the game. Fortunately, the defense is really what scares me. And I think that's going to be the key is whether Owen Freeman and McAndrew. So going back, yes, I agree. But whether they can have any post presence and really deter any shots, anything like that, because the reason why Creighton was so successful the last few years, even though they did have good offense, but having Kalkbrenner in the paint and just not giving other teams options to score, especially inside and kind of forcing outside shots was really the key for them and why they were able to be so successful. So they don't need a Kalkbrenner level player, but if they can be this dominant offensively while still having a defensive presence, then I totally agree. They could be a Big East favorite. It just really comes down to who's going to step up on defense.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Creighton, I do think they're a top 25 team. I'm excited to see how they are. Like, life past Ryan Kalkbrenner seems very intriguing, which is fun if you're a Creighton fan, right? Because you lose an all-time great, but it just seems like you reload. So props to McDermott and the Blue Jays for doing that. A couple more teams to get to on this episode, so we'll move it along to number 23, Wisconsin, again out of the Big Ten. Dan wrote this one. Look, Greg Gard seems to maybe be figuring it out. I can't believe he's lasted until his 11th season at Wisconsin. I'm honestly surprised that they didn't decide to move on for someone else. He loses John Tonje. He loses this group of Stephen Crowell, Max Klesmit, Kamari McGee, kind of this Wisconsin group that maybe thought they could have one last run at things. And they had a pretty successful season. But, Ariel, it seems like it's actually going to be a much more intriguing and better Wisconsin roster this year. I kind of like what they have this season.
Yeah, I wish they had a rule that if a guy's like awesome in his 1 year with the team, that he can stay for another year. Because I feel like one season of John Tonje just wasn't enough. I feel like having a second season would really satisfy a lot of college basketball fans just because he was so awesome last year. And really, I won't say he came out of nowhere because he was solid in the past, but no one could have expected the season he had. What I do like, though, is the Nick Boyd edition from San Diego State. Solid defender, solid offensive player, guy with a lot of experience. And then John Blackwell's really the key piece here, whether he's going to break out. He had an awesome season last year, and he can take that next step. He could be the top John Tonje kind of player. I disagree that they're going to be better than last year. I think they'll be a little bit worse just because last year they had a lot of retention from that other team, especially with Winter and Crowell, like you mentioned. I think they did a lot, even though if it didn't show up on the stat sheet, but they'll still be a 5 to 8 seed. And I think this is a good spot for them, just right inside the top 25.
Yeah, it'll be a fun Wisconsin team to watch. They still, I know I mentioned it's kind of like a changing of the guard, but they still do have guys from last season. Just seems like Stephen Crowell was there for a million years. So maybe that's the guy that was in my head. I was like, kind of like him and Colin Castleton. Felt like ever since I started this website back in like 2017, I've been writing about Colin Castleton and Stephen Crowell. So yeah, they are no longer in college basketball, we think, but Perry Ellis might be. I don't know. Move on to number 22. A team that probably would not be number 22 if we ranked them again today, right? And we did rank this team at the beginning of the summer. So this is kind of what we thought, but obviously, as I wrote this Gonzaga starting lineup in this article, the projected starting lineup was Braden Smith, Adam Miller, Steele Venters, Braden Huff, Graham Ike. We now know that Tyon Grant-Foster is eligible. As we are recording this podcast on Monday, October 27th, Tyon Grant-Foster will play for Gonzaga this season. So, Ariel, I'll just leave it to you. You have Graham Ike. You have Braden Huff. You've got a good point guard in Braden Smith, some scorers in Adam Miller and Steele Venters. The bench was looking rough. But now one of those guys is going to the bench because Tyon Grant-Foster is coming into the starting lineup.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Getting that Grant-Foster news is huge for them just in terms of their depth. And this is a guy who's played a billion seasons of college basketball. Obviously, we're really happy he's even playing after the whole medical issue he had a few years ago. Another guy with a lot of medical issues is Steele Venters. Won the Big Sky Player of the Year 2 years ago. Committed to Gonzaga, got hurt preseason, came back last year, got hurt right again in the preseason. Right now he's healthy, fingers crossed. So I'm excited to see him play after missing those 2 years. But you mentioned it, that front court just so good with Huff and Graham Ike. I mean, I just can't see any team in their conference even coming close to stopping them. And they obviously load up their schedule with a lot of really talented teams in the non-conference. And I think they're going to have a really tough time as well. In terms of Gonzaga teams, I'd say this is one of the quote-unquote weaker teams they've had just because they're missing like that superstar like Nemhard or Drew Timme or any of those guys. But if a down year is 22 in the country and probably a top 5 seed, then I think any team will take that year after year.
I will say one thing, and again, exhibitions, especially against D3 teams, do not take anything for that. But in 17 minutes, Ismail Diagne had a double-double with 14 points, 10 rebounds. Again, does it matter? No, but this is a guy who played 10 games last season, averaged 6 minutes a game, and it kind of already, even before these exhibitions, was a guy who I think Gonzaga wanted to increase the minutes, increase it, to help this depth of this team. It feels like he might be ready to take that next step. I like Mario Saint-Superi, a recruit from Spain who just seems like he could run the point, backup point guard if needed. Like a lot of guys on this Gonzaga team. I agree with you. Not as good and not as much star power as usual, but maybe that just is going to be the Gonzaga team that does it all, right? Like you just never know. Like I'll be honest, I wouldn't pick them to win the national championship, but if this team goes out and has one of those great seasons, has a great non-conference and gets a 1 or a 2 seed, like I wouldn't be shocked. And I would say, you know what? This might be the year that Mark Few does it. One more team in today's episode, and that is number 21, Michigan State. A Spartans team, Ariel, who you wrote about, so I'll toss this one to you. They bring back guys. They bring in a few guys. Starting lineup is honestly mostly the same, guys that they had in the rotation last year, though. So we kind of know what to expect with Michigan State, right?
Yeah, I think retention is huge with this team. I mean, they won the Big Ten by 3 games last year. That's really impressive to win any conference by 3 games. I don't think they're going to do that again this year, but they bring back a lot of those guys that made them successful. They do lose a bunch, obviously, with Jace Richardson gone and Trey Holloman and Jaden Akins. But I like Jeremy Fears a lot. I think he's a huge breakout contender. Last year started all 35 games, and with a lot of those guards out of the picture now, I think he'll be set for a big year. Obviously, the big name, though, is Cohen Carr. I mean, maybe the most fun player in college basketball. I feel like anytime Michigan State plays, you go on your phone and there's some clip of him dunking the ball from the free throw line or blocking a shot from out of bounds. It's just crazy how athletic he is. I think they have to rely on that retention, though, because they didn't bring in a lot this offseason. They brought in Trey Fort, but besides that, there's not much. You also just have to trust Izzo because he knows how to win and he's going to get the job done. But it'll be an interesting team. I feel like last year they overachieved for sure. And compared to the previous couple of years, they weren't as good. So I wouldn't be surprised if they regress a little, but I also trust the retention that these guys who were part of this winning roster last year will continue with that.
Jeremy Fears only made 1 3-point shot in his final 7 games of the season last year. I think he's going to need to add a little bit of a 3-point shot this year. He shot it well, 34% on the season, but I think he's just going to have to be a little bit more consistent and make teams guess because he's one of the best passers in the Big Ten, right? I mean, the guy showed it off last season, but I think for him to take that next step as a guard, he's going to have to do a little bit more, just more. He's just going to have to shoot a little bit more and keep teams off balance more. That's my one opinion. Otherwise, I really like this Michigan State team. I think they're a really great team. I think that, we should obviously take them very seriously in the Big Ten. We had a lot of Big Ten teams in this episode, and Michigan State's right up there with the best of the best. Yeah,
they allowed opponents shot 28% from 3 against them last year, which is crazy. Second best in the country. So they can continue that, then they'll be okay.
All right, well, there you have it. Those are teams 30 to 21 in our episode today. College Basketball Rank 2025 moving along. We got 20 more teams to get to here as college basketball is just getting going here in the 2025 season. We'll talk to you next time.